What's happening, folks? Back with another reaction. Back with Luca on the floor in front of me. And we're returning for another Leonard Nimoy track. Thank you again to Han Solo. And I've been jumping around, going through this larger folder that was provided to me a bit randomly. But the next track I selected is I Wish I Was, or If I Was. If I Was a Carpenter. So yes, it's a hypothetical, it's a conditional, or at least sounds like part of a conditional. If I was a carpenter, then such and such, then I would do this, or then this would happen, or this would be the case. And again, it's a hypothetical, because you wouldn't say that if you were in fact a carpenter. So it sounds like someone who's mentally speculating, who's perhaps deducing or concluding, and in regard to a life he is not living. I suppose it could actually be from the point of view of a woman, but given that the singer will be a man, I'm guessing that the narrator is male. In any case, I've noticed that some of the tunes in this larger compilation or folder I'm working from are actually covers, so in this case I am not familiar with the song title, though it may very well be a cover again. But yes, of course, also, in the Western world anyway, when you mention Carpenter, there's always the possibility that it could relate to the biblical story of Jesus, who was a carpenter prior to his following through of the teleology that is, part of that story. So yes, the idea of carpentry, putting together timber to make structures, whether it be houses or tables or other artifacts that are built out of wood. So yes, I'll see what I can catch on the first listen. This is Leonard Nimoy. The track is If I Was a Carpenter, and it's included in a larger, I think, compilation or greatest hits album, something like that I'm working from.
If I were a carpenter and you were a lady, would you marry me anyway? Would you have my baby? If a tinker were my trade, would you still find me carrying the pots I made, following behind me? Save my love through loneliness, save my love through sorrow, giving you my loneliness, give me your tomorrow. If I worked my hands in would you still love me? Answer me, yes I would. I'd put you above me. If I were a miller at a mill wheel grinding, would you miss your colored box, your soft shoes shining? Save my love through loneliness, save my love through sorrow, giving you my loneliness, give me your tomorrow. If I were a carpenter and you were a lady, would you marry me anyway? Would you have my baby?
Wow. Okay, so I just like to start by saying, would you have my baby is a very intense question to ask someone. Also, if we are talking about hypotheticals, which maybe we're not. I mean, first of all, he conjugates the word differently in the song than the title. If I was a carpenter, if I were a carpenter, which could either be a slightly incorrect conjugation, singular to plural, but it could also be about tense, although was is past tense too, so I guess that doesn't really provide any illumination. But if he's saying, like, if I were a carpenter, if you were a lady, which, again, if we're working in hypotheticals or speculatives, then it would imply that the person being asked these questions is not, in fact, a lady. Now, a lady can be just literally saying that they are of the female gender, but lady can also have, like, socioeconomic connotations, like a woman versus a lady having, some sense of, like, refined mannerisms, or, a cultural sophistication, or a level of education, or just a manner of behavior that is seen as proper, versus someone who is not ladylike and might be a bit more raw or a bit more crude, as social and cultural and national conventions define these things. But it seems to be saying, at least on some level, like, if I was a blue-collar worker who worked with my hands, would you still love me? Would you still consider me marriage material? Would you still be willing to have a relationship and indeed children with me? And he's saying that he's, lonely, he's gone through suffering, he's gone through sorrow, and he's offering his onlyness, meaning his, singular, monogamous commitment to someone, if they'll give him their tomorrow, meaning, like, I don't just want this to be a one-time thing or just a fling. I want this to be something that goes into the future, and I'll give you my commitment in a singular sense. If, it sounds like he's sort of trying to establish a contract, not in a, literal sign on the dotted line, please, but saying, hey, I'll give you this if you give me that. But then he was saying something like, you can move beyond your something shoe shine, which, a shoe shine is a very manual labor type of job, a job lower on the socioeconomic rungs. And so, maybe he's saying, like, you can stop working if you'll be my lady, again, excuse me, in a more literal way, like, if you'll be my woman, my partner, then you can give up that world and, I'll work hard with my hands for you. Though he does bring in another speculative idea, the idea of being a miller, which, it's not the same as a carpenter, but it sounds like it's a similar type of statement of, if I were to be a simple, humble worker, excuse me, who earned my wages through respectable, if also, again, common person type of work, is that good enough for you? So, yeah, again, I don't know if this is a cover. At least the way that Nimoy delivers it, it feels very, a bit, maybe not silly, but it feels like he's having fun with the concepts, and it's, a bit of a, like, wink and a bit of a cheekiness to it. So, either way, good vocals, they're not as ridiculous as Shatner's vocals. They do have, again, a bit of, like, funny charisma to them, but they're not that, like, deadpan delivery where it's like, it's so ridiculous when you listen to Shatner. Not in a bad way, again, I enjoy his stuff too, but it does feel like Nimoy is slightly more, like, regular music than Shatner. But again, I don't know if this is a cover, and I don't know how this, if it is, how similar to or distinct from the original it may be. But yeah, a crazy little narrative of a tune, although again, it's really hypothetical. It's, nothing seems decided. We don't hear from the lady or the woman or the non-lady. Again, if you were a lady, there's still a funny character to that question, because again, if it's speculative, well then what is she now? Is she just like a person who doesn't have that lady status? So either way, I wonder what people think. Do let me know, and I will see you next time. Peace.